look at the importance of historical and structural context in the lives of immigrants and their families, right? And so looking at the importance of our laws, our institutions, and our labor market, and how immigrants and their families come into this country, what they come with, and the reception they get really determines the passive incorporation. This literature has focused almost exclusively on the children of immigrants, and as this group of young immigrants and the children of immigrants have grown over, this scholarship has increasingly focused on their transition to adulthood. Right? As we have larger numbers, we've been able to surmise what's happening to these young people as they move through adolescence and young adulthood. On the other hand, I'm also interested in this law and society scholarship that focuses moves the focus away from the individual immigrant and away from the border, and looks at the processes, right? The ways in which the law shapes or constrains day-to-day life, right? Also I'm very interested in looking at the scholarship that challenges dichotomous categories, right? The work of Cecilia Menjivar, for example, looking at these gray areas, right? That it's not enough to study kind of the experience of being undocumented versus documented, but the reality is that people move in and out. And so again, the emphasis here on the legal processes and what scholars call the production and condition of migrant illegality. And so here's my study. As a lot of you are probably familiar with the notion that studying hard-to-reach population really requires moving beyond survey research and really hard-to-reach populations are obscured by a lot of national data sets, right? So it really takes, I think that's not 3 minus or 3+ years of fieldwork. So it really takes a lot of time. And so what I did is that I spent 3.5 years in Southern California, getting to know the communities, getting to know key folks at organizations, and I spent 2 years before actually collecting interviews. By the time that I did interviews, I had conversations with about 250 young adults, 1.5 in second generation, born to at least one undocumented parent. 150 of those were 1.5 generation without legal status. And then I did life histories with 102. 78 of those are undocumented. Mexican origin, so I think it's really important for me to know that this is really a story of undocumented Mexican Americans in the United States, in Southern California, LA in particular. I was also very interested in my experience in the field and my experience in the educational system in Chicago, that I noticed that what happened to different strata of our kids in the neighborhood really was shaped largely by what happened in school. And so like a lot of studies before mine, Paul Willis' study, and some others, Jay McLeod's study, was really interested in what happened to the college goers, but also what happened to those who ended up exiting before high school graduation or at high school graduation. And so here are the really broad questions that frame this research. One, how do undocumented youth experience the constraints of the law? And number two, how do these experiences shape their educational and developmental trajectories? And so what I'm arguing here is that different stages in the life course produce different experiences with and in relationship to undocumented status. So let me talk about this transition to adulthood. So scholars have argued about this 1.5 generation that they face the dual challenges of acculturation and transitioning to adulthood. Very different from their parents, these young people, because of Plyler, are integrated into a legally permissible institution from day one. So they get to this country and they're able to go to school, which is a qualitatively very different experience from that of their parents, right? So they grow up, like some of my respondents have said, they grow up watching Barney and the Power Rangers, they date, they socialize, they go to prom, they do all the things that American-born kids are doing, and in the company of American-born peers. And so with each year living in the United States, they speak more of the English language, and their culture is closer to an American culture than it is to their parents' culture. And with each year, they move further and further away from their parents' experience, their parents' reality. Paradoxically, each year takes them closer and closer to their parents' reality as they move towards their adolescence. And adult requirements, as we've talked about already, trigger legal limitations. And so as these kids make transitions through adolescence and young adulthood, they move from protected to unprotected, right? From inclusion to exclusion, from de facto legal to illegal. And so here I share a little bit about Alex's period of discovery. Among the young people that I've met and talked to, many talk about this issue and this importance of this discovery. And here's Rodolfo. And Rodolfo says, well, you know what? I never actually felt like I wasn't born here. Because when I came here, I was like 10 and a half. I went to school, I learned the language. But it was like, I first felt like I was really out of place when I graduated from high school, when I tried to get a job. And I asked, why was that? He said, because I didn't have a social security number. Well, I didn't even know. I mean, I didn't even know what it meant. You know, social security, legal, illegal, I didn't even know what that was. I asked my mom, and she said it's in the process. In the process? I didn't even know what that meant. I don't know why she would tell us that. And so this discovery, so young people like Rodolfo who go through this awakening, right? And like one of my respondents said in the title of it, it's like waking up to a nightmare, right? Worlds change completely. And of course, many of those that I interviewed knew when they were children, but it wasn't until their status was matched up with exclusions till it became really salient in their lives, right? And so, number one is block paths. And so, what happens when you're going along on your way and all of a sudden, as we talked about with Alex, there are all of these barriers, all of these things that get in the way. And here's Rodolfo again. He said that when I actually wanted to get a job, I couldn't. I couldn't because I didn't have a social security number. So my first job was cleaning carpets, helping out my dad. And so a lot of these young people, though many of them didn't feel as though they were on the track to go to college, they looked around at their family and said, well, you know, look, I speak English well, I have levels of education that surpass my parents and other family members, I should be able to get more. And many of them find themselves with the same limited range of options. And here's Sergio. Sergio, I talked to Sergio, and he explained to me that he had been waiting, he'd been saving up his money, he had paper routes as a kid, and he had helped his dad on the weekends. He wanted a 1957 Chevy. This was his dream, to get a 1957 Chevy. Saved up money, this was his goal. And so here he is, he's like, that really sucked. I had been all like, I'm going to get my car before all of you, but I couldn't. It was unfair, and like I had to, you know, what could I do? How could I tell them I can't drive, I can't get my license? It really messed me up, right? And this feeling of being really messed up, and not knowing where to go. Secondly, the stigma that many respondents described came to serve as a second border that reinforced the exclusion. Moving into a very kind of heightened and aware state of being undocumented and what that meant was something also that children didn't have to discuss with their peers, right? But moving into adolescence, where it becomes a lot more pronounced, meant moving into a stigmatized category, right? And so here are respondents talking about that. And here's Grace. Grace says, I just stopped going out. I was tired of asking for a ride and coming up with excuses. And every time it was a hassle with my friends. They wouldn't let it go. They just wouldn't let it go. So I started telling them I was too busy with school. At first they didn't like that, but after a while they just stopped inviting me. I end up spending a lot of weekends by myself because most of my friends don't call me anymore. It's such a hassle to explain everything to people. And it's affected the way I am when I meet new people. I used to be very outgoing, but now I try to keep my guard up. I try not to get too close to people. And what she's explaining is, what one of my respondents said is that at this very critical juncture, I realized that most of my life that I'd been lied to. My parents lied to me, my teachers lied to me, and this kind of feeling of anger. And he said, but look at me now. I find myself all the time, every day, having to lie to people. And so this is what Grace is talking about. Making up excuses why she's taking the bus and not driving. Making up excuses for why she's not working. Making up excuses for why she's not going to her dream school. Making up excuses, this is in LA, of why she can't go with friends to Tijuana or even to San Diego, right? And making up excuses to friends why she's not going to the bars with them, right? And here's the Esperanza, and for Spanish speakers in the group, the name is not without irony. And she says, everyone was so excited. My friend got into Stanford and another was going to UCLA. I didn't say anything, I felt terrible. There was an AB 540 at the time, and people know AB 540, it's in-state tuition in the state of California for undocumented students. There was an AB 540 at the time, and I didn't know what to do. I really had no clue what I was going to do. They asked me where I was going to go. I didn't want to go into the whole undocumented thing, so I told them I was going to community college to save money. They couldn't believe it. They told me that Stanford was giving them this much, and UCLA was giving them this much. I should be able to get financial aid. We should be able to get financial aid. And besides, I shouldn't be going to community college. You should be with us, they said. They were all happy and hugging each other, but I couldn't share in their excitement. I felt I had to hide. I was really embarrassed. So a lot of young people explaining through the interviews that, one, they had to swallow disappointment, but two, they had to make up excuses about it, right? And this reality of really lives changing, having to hide it, and not being able to talk about it. Grace from the slide before, I ran into Grace a month after our interview on her university campus. She was really distraught, and I said, let's sit down, let's get some coffee. And she explained to me that she had been watching TV with her boyfriend, and a news segment came on about undocumented migration. Her boyfriend, who didn't know her status, she kept her status a secret to her boyfriend, started yelling at the TV about these damn illegals. She didn't say anything. She told me that the next morning when they got up, she explained to him that she had become too busy with school and too busy with work, and that she had to break up, that her life had become too busy, and so she quietly broke up with him. So number 3, so if we think about this conditioning, right, this kind of Americanization and the socialization that happens through school, and think about these young people compared to their parents who are absorbed into low-wage, difficult, and dangerous labor markets, right, and learn the secrets to survival, learn how to survive on a day-to-day basis, right? these young people are taught not to survive as undocumented immigrants, right? But to be schooled and socialized, and historically, what has been the role of public school?